you'd like to see it in its entirety, go to our website, cspan.org. I'm going to go live now to the National Press Club here in Washington for a news briefing from Census Director Stephen Dillingham and other top officials with the Census Bureau. This is live coverage on C-SPAN 2.
Sharing with you all the work that we've done getting prepared for the 2020 census. Today you'll hear from our director, Dr. Stephen Dillingham, as well as Albert Fontenot, our Associate Director for Decennial Programs, and Timothy Olson, our Associate Director for Field Operations. And we're very excited that we have 3 of our national partners join us to talk about their efforts to complete the 2020 count across the country and to complete an accurate count across the country for the 2020 census. But first, we'd like to kick off the program with a video about the importance of the 2020 census.
Can one girl in a small town, an architect in a major city, and a suburban high school coach shape the future of the United States? Yes, they can. Because every 10 years, the census gives us that power. You can shape your future by responding to the 2020 census. Where do we need new roads to make our lives easier? Where will new school programs help our children thrive? Where could a new health clinic benefit neighborhoods? The 2020 census will inform these decisions and shape how billions of dollars will be distributed to communities like yours each year. And in 2020, you can respond to the census online, by phone, or by mail. It's easy, safe, and important. Make sure you and everyone you know is counted. Now is the time for you to get involved. Your community needs you. Together, we can educate and excite, inspire and make sure every voice is heard. Together, we can shape our future.
I hope that got you excited. It gets me excited. And I'd like now to introduce our director, Dr. Stephen Dillingham. Dr. Stephen Dillingham is the 25th Census Bureau Director. He has 25 years of statistical research and senior management and legal experience in the federal government. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Stephen Dillingham.
Well, good morning, everyone. I want to welcome you all. This is a very special and exciting day. We are so pleased to have you here and have others viewing and listening by television and radio and other means. Today, we are celebrating the 2020 Census one-year-out kickoff event with the media and with our dedicated partners. There are 3 important days that we experience every decade. One is the announcement of the census kickoff, reminding people across the nation that the census is coming. Second, we celebrate official Census Day, which next year will be April 1st, 2020, and we announce the decennial census is here and it's underway. And third, upon successfully completing the census count, we follow the constitutional mandate and tradition that began in 1790, announcing the results of our nation's population count. In fact, about a decade ago, such an event was held in this very room, announcing the count for the 2010 census. We verified that more than 308 million people were then living in the United States. Today, a year out from the official Census Day, we couldn't be more excited. The reason being that we are on mission, on schedule, on budget, on message, and on course to complete the biggest and best census ever. Our mission is to count everyone living in the United States. Once, only once, and in the right place. With your help and the support of all of our many partners and new ways to reach people and communities, including the hard to count, and the new and better IT safeguards and privacy protections to ensure that confidentiality is not compromised. This is very good news, and we appreciate all of you and others for what you're doing to support the 2020 census. Very importantly, we appreciate your efforts in sharing a message across America that you just witnessed in our video clip here. The 2020 census is easy, it's secure, and it's important. Now, it's easy because for the first time you can answer online, by phone, or on paper, the traditional way. The new options create new efficiencies, relieve burdens, and reassure people that assistance is but a phone call away. And we all carry these phones. I had 2 a while ago. I can answer the census with one, and I can get information with the other on how to complete the census. So I don't think we have a shortage of phones. That's one of the options. And certainly the internet can be accessed in many different ways from many different places. But if you don't have the internet access and you decide not to use your phone, you can certainly do it the old-fashioned way, the way that still works, and that's on paper. Now, it's secure. As I described, we're using the latest and best technologies and practices to protect data confidentiality, and strong federal laws apply. But it's probably the message that we really want to emphasize is how important it is. We need to remind everyone the recognized importance of collecting a complete and accurate population count, which was realized soon after we became a nation. The importance of census data has increased ever since. We now live in an information age where accurate data improves the quality of our lives and supports our thriving economy. Our census contributes to what we know about our nation and its people. Census data is used directly and indirectly on a daily basis by the communities, by the governments at all levels, by the businesses, and by the people across the country in making critical decisions and in making investments. Recently, with bipartisan support, the Congress passed and the President signed legislation that recognizes the importance of accurate data in decision-making. The decennial census does just that. It is the foundation of analyses, decisions, policies, practices, and innovations across our nation. For example, the federal government uses census data in allocating more than $675 billion annually. Census data is also used by state and local governments, communities, and businesses in deciding needs and resources for schools, health systems, social services, infrastructure, safety, and business and economic competitiveness. These decisions impact our lives, the well-being of our people, and the future of our nation. I am so pleased that we have the support of our many valued partners committed to this mission. The partnership list grows daily, and partner outreach efforts are expanding. Many of you represent the trusted voices. You are uniquely positioned to share and reinforce a concise yet vital message that the 2020 census is easy, secure, and important. You can reinforce their understanding of how responses are a means for shaping the future, including the future of all who respond, and their families, and their friends, their communities, organizations, businesses, government at all levels, and the nation at large. For me, there is no greater urgency nor higher calling than contributing to this vital public service. Let's join together and reinforce the message to all people and communities. When the census begins, you can indeed help shape your future. And you can do it quickly, easily, and securely by answering and submitting your 2020 census questionnaire. Thank you for your help and support. Special thanks for all who could be here today, those who have followed today's events from afar, and those responsible for making it happen, including the Department of Commerce leadership and colleagues, congressional and agency staff, event speakers, and perhaps most importantly, our valued partners and supporters. I'd now like to introduce our talented and dedicated leader of the 2020 census efforts, Associate Director Al Fontenot.
Thank you, Dr. Dillingham. Good morning. I'm very excited to be here with you this morning to kick off our one-year event prior to Census Day, April 1st, 2020. The 2020 census is a massive undertaking, and through the hard work, dedication, and mission focus of our Census Bureau staff, our contractors, and our external partners, we will be introducing new technologies, new methods, and new processes, all designed to make this census easy, safe, and secure, and enable us to fulfill our important constitutional mandate to get a complete and accurate count of the population of the United States. We have been measuring and monitoring our progress and refining our system design through a series of tests down through the decade, culminating in our 2018 end-to-end census test in Providence, Rhode Island. We completed the infield portion of the test in August 2018, and this past Friday, we delivered the Public Law 94-171 redistricting data file prototype to all 50 states, D.C., and Puerto Rico as part of the final 2018 census test requirement. This milestone marks the successful completion of the 2018 census test. The big takeaway from the 2018 census test is that all of our systems deployed and integrated effectively. In our test, real people were able to effectively use the technology in real-world conditions. Respondents were able to effectively navigate and use our internet self-response application, and our census questionnaire assistance staff was able to efficiently respond to telephone requests for help filling out census online or on paper, handle calls in languages other than English, and record census data from respondents who wanted to provide their census information over the telephone. We have been able to do in prior censuses is managing the paper, mail out, mail back, and we were able to do that during our 2018 test. We were able to mail out forms, receive and process paper questionnaires. More than half of all the households in the test, 52.3%, responded to the test on their own, without the motivation of an advertising campaign. This number surpassed our goal for the test by 3 percentage points. In 2020, we will have the strongest paid advertising campaign in census history, in which we will employ traditional media and use real-time optimization, campaign optimization, which will help us focus our campaign and target our campaign using social and digital media to help direct our efforts and also to help increased partnership staff focus on the areas in which they are most needed to help increase response rates. This strong combination will help in our efforts to maximize self-response. The end-to-end test results showed that we were able to successfully implement a number of innovations, including route optimization, automation of assignments, transmission of casework, and other system processes that increased our efficiencies and helped us to achieve an average productivity increase of over 50% compared to 2010. We're taking the lessons learned during the test and incorporating and refining them as we transition from our planning and preparation phase and move into execution. We currently are working to ensure that all our systems can scale up and perform effectively to handle the load of work that we expect for the 2020 census. We're also working with government and private sector cybersecurity experts to ensure we're building in the most state-of-the-art protections against cyber hacking, cyber intrusion, and other cyber crimes to ensure that all the data we collect remains secure. In August of this year, just 4 months from now, we will begin our in-field address canvassing operation. This is the first in-field operation for the 2020 census. As Tim Olson will address in a few moments, we're well underway with the recruiting and hiring efforts for these early operations. Additionally, 37 of our 39 area census offices which support early operations are ready for business, and the remaining 2 will be ready within days. The full complement of our local census offices, which will support peak operations next year, will begin opening in June of this year. Now let me talk for a few minutes about how responding to the 2020 census will be easier than it's ever been before. In 2020, we are providing 3 modes of response, so everyone will be able to respond the way they prefer, through the internet, over the phone, or by returning a paper questionnaire. While we're emphasizing internet response because it's quicker and easier for our respondents, and it's more efficient for us, we recognize that not everyone has access to the internet. Not everyone has access to a computer or Wi-Fi, and some who do have access may not want to use the internet to respond to the census. Everyone who wants to do their 2020 census on paper will have the opportunity to send in a paper questionnaire just like they did in 2010. During the week of March 12, 2020, we'll begin sending invitations out to participate in the census. In the first mailing, some people will get an invitation to go onto the internet and enter their census information into our online app. Others, living in areas with low internet connectivity or those who are less likely to use the internet, will receive a paper questionnaire in the first mailing in addition to their invitation to participate online or by phone. On the fourth mailing, which will begin a few days after Census Day, everyone who has not yet responded to the census in one of our three modes will receive a reminder letter which will contain a paper questionnaire. Just to put it simply, everyone will have a chance to respond to the census the way they choose to respond, online, over the phone, or on paper. The internet gives us another advantage. For the first time, people will be able to respond without giving an identification number that we have provided to them. We call this non-ID processing, but it might be better to think of it as real-time ID processing. This is huge for us. This means people can respond anywhere, anytime, using their smartphone, their tablet, their computer, with or without the information that we sent them in their mail package. It also means that our census partners will be able to encourage people to respond right when they are talking to them. In the past, people needed to find the paper form, the questionnaire we had mailed them, someplace at home, not sure where they put it, but now they can respond the minute they're encouraged to do so. Imagine holding a respond to the census event at a conference, in a sports stadium, after services in a church, synagogue, or mosque. People can respond right then and right there. We have not been able to do this before, and we think it's a great opportunity to encourage people to act while census is top of mind. Another way we're making it easy to respond to this census is our increased use of language services. Through the internet and over the telephone, we'll make it possible for people to respond in 12 non-English languages. These 12 non-English languages cover 87% of the households in America that do not speak English well. Additionally, we will be providing support materials in 59 other languages, which takes the percentage to over 99%. We will also provide shells and template materials to help community leaders, partners, and those who support our communities that speak other languages or dialects develop and ensure that those people also can answer the census. Finally, to be sure that we count everyone once, only once, and in the right place, we have several operations tailored to people living in special situations. Our group quarters operation is designed for people who live or stay in a group living arrangement, such as university student housing, residential treatment facilities, group homes, prisons, and other correctional facilities. We will conduct a special operation which enables us to reach out and count people who are without conventional housing or people experiencing homelessness by enumerating them at the places where they receive services or at pre-identified outdoor locations. We will work closely with our community partners and advocacy organizations to build a location list of missions, shelters, soup kitchens, emergency and transitional shelters, and outdoor locations where people experiencing homelessness congregate. We will then visit these locations close to Census Day to conduct our enumeration. In a related operation, we'll be focusing on people who are highly mobile and do not have a usual home elsewhere. These include people such as those living in campgrounds, RV parks, hotels and motels, marinas, racetracks, circuses, or carnivals. We develop special operations for the military, including those stationed or deployed overseas, as well as federal employees stationed overseas. One of the most undercounted groups each census has been young children. And to counter that challenge, we're mounting a major initiative to remind parents and guardians that young children are our future and they count too, and to remind them to be sure to list their children on your census form. As you can see, we're making extensive preparation for the 2020 census, but we can't do it by ourselves. We need you to step up and be a part of the effort to be sure everyone is counted. With our combined commitment, I am confident that we're on track to reach our goal of counting everyone once, only once, and in the right place. But it's not just up to us, it's up to everyone. You have the power to shape your future, starting with the 2020 census. Now I'd like to introduce the man who has the awesome responsibility of managing 500,000 plus temporary employees at all our field offices and our remote operations, my good friend, our Associate Director for Field Operations, Tim Olson.
Al, thank you so much. That's quite the introduction. So all 500,000 report directly to me. I'm kidding. Within the field structure of the Bureau, we literally have thousands of managers and supervisors, and these are not part of my prepared remarks, but they are fantastic, amazing people. And a shout out to them that are listening to this presentation this morning. So welcome. And a warm hello to everyone in this room and those listening from a distance. And thank you for your commitment to an accurate census in 2020. Though Census Day 2020 is 1 year away, it feels like it is tomorrow. We are already active on the ground with thousands of employees, many thousands of active partnerships, and a physical and IT infrastructure that is functioning right now that will permit us to conduct an accurate and successful count in 2020. Today, I will brief you on 3 very important areas of the 2020 census: recruiting, partnerships, and the important role of our census field infrastructure. First, let me discuss recruitment for temporary census jobs. This past fall, we began early recruiting to generate more than 200,000 applicants by this June, so that we can fill approximately 50,000 field jobs to conduct our first major field operation later this summer in field address canvassing. I'm happy to report today that we are more than 2 months ahead of schedule with recruiting applicants, and we've already recruited more than 230,000 applicants that will be considered for the 50,000 jobs later this summer. And it's not too late to apply and be considered for these important jobs. For the first time in census history, we are recruiting for field positions through an online and secure website at 2020census.gov/jobs. I'll say that another time in a moment. Unlike prior censuses that required every single applicant to spend nearly 3 hours in a proctored census testing session to complete a paper job application and a census test, and then have all of that material bundled up and hand-delivered to a local census office, and then keyed into census personnel systems by other temporary staff. This time, it is so much easier. The online application process takes less than 30 minutes and is extremely simple to complete. And though the economy is at a historic period with low unemployment, we are cautiously optimistic that these early recruiting results will bode well when we begin the peak recruiting phase later this fall, and we seek an additional 2.3 million job applicants to fill more than 500,000 temporary census jobs needed to conduct enumeration activities in the spring of 2020. Again, applying for a temporary census job is really simple, and it's safe. Simply go to 2020census.gov/jobs for more information, and then begin that process of becoming part of our nation's history in 2020. Pay rates range from $13.50 to $30 per hour, depending on where you live. Field employees are reimbursed for official mileage and receive all the equipment and training needed for their job. Second, let me talk about partnership, our connection with thousands of organizations that support the 2020 census in their local communities. For the 2020 census, we are hiring more than 1,500 partnership specialists to enlist more than 300,000 organizations to serve as census partners. This is nearly double the number of professional partnership hired during the last census in 2010. Right now, more than 700 partnership staff have been hired, and we expect to reach the full staffing level of 1,500 by this July. Many partnership staff are bilingual and all are experienced and professional community engagement experts. To apply for these positions, simply go to usajobs.gov and search for, quote, Census Partnership Specialist to be considered for these important positions. As I said a moment ago, our goal is to generate active partnerships with more than 300,000 organizations during the 2020 census. Right now, as this program is ramping up, more than 9,000 organizations have already signed on as census partners, and this list grows every single day. Partners include organizations representing all levels of our nation's society, including national organizations, state, local, and tribal governments, community and neighborhood associations, business groups, school educators, faith-based organizations, healthcare providers, and groups that exist to serve local residents and advocate on their behalf. Partners urge participation in the census and serve as trusted voices in their communities, further motivating hard-to-count populations to be included in the census. To many partners in this room and those listening to this event from afar, I want to thank you for your commitment and passion to your communities, and I especially thank you for all you are doing to make sure the 2020 census represents everyone who lives in our communities. One very tangible activity that partners do is form local complete count committees. These committees are formed by census partners, and they seek to make sure everyone in their community is counted during the 2020 census. At this moment, 1 year before Census Day 2020, 46 states have formed complete count committees or commissions, including Puerto Rico and the District of Columbia. In addition, more than 1,600 local and tribal complete count committees have been formed throughout the nation. Displayed behind me is a national map, and this shows where complete count committees have already been formed as of today. And very much like our early recruiting successes, with more people applying for temporary census jobs every single day, this list of complete count committees, it literally grows every single week. If you are interested in forming or joining a complete count committee in your area, please contact the Census Bureau's Regional Census Center responsible for your area. They will connect you with existing committees, or they will guide you to resources so that you can form your own committee. Our census staff also provide training and technical assistance throughout the formation and planning stage. Finally, let me discuss our field infrastructure and the thousands of people involved that make this happen. 6 regional census centers opened more than 1 year ago in the spring of 2018 in New York City, Philadelphia, Atlanta, Chicago, Dallas, and Los Angeles. These offices mirror our permanent regional office structure that manages all ongoing surveys conducted by the Census Bureau throughout the decade, such as the American Community Survey and dozens of other major surveys that occur every single day of every year throughout the decade. But for the decennial census, because it is so big and so important, it's enshrined in the United States Constitution, we established separate and focused regional census centers that are stood up as senior management hubs to ensure all decennial census activities are conducted on time and accurately within their assigned states. Each RCC includes approximately 600 professional and support staff working either in the office or from their homes in locations away from the RCC city. At the more local level, we have started opening 248 area census offices throughout the nation to conduct recruiting and field operations. I'm pleased to announce today that leases for each of these temporary offices planned for 2020 are now in place, and each office is in the process of being designed and built out to conduct census operations throughout the nation. As Al mentioned a moment ago, 39 of these area census offices do open earlier than the rest, and they are now actively functioning with management teams and support staff to conduct our first field operation that takes place this August and September. The rest of the area census offices will open for business in the late summer of 2019 to conduct peak census operations during the spring and summer of 2020. There are three other really important field infrastructure elements I want to highlight today. First, this past spring, we opened our Census Field Logistics Center in Jeffersonville, Indiana, that assembles and kits materials for use by Census Field employees throughout the nation. Second, we are in the final stages of building out 2 paper data capture centers that will process paper census questionnaires returned by an estimated 40 million households during the census. The Paper Data Capture Center East is co-located with the Logistics Center in Jeffersonville, Indiana, and the Paper Data Capture Center West is located in Phoenix, Arizona. These 3 facilities, comprised of 400,000 square feet of lease space during the census, will hire more than 3,000 temporary staff to conduct these important functions for the 2020 census starting this fall. In closing, let me state unequivocally that we are well on our way to conducting the 2020 census, and it has already begun. Nearly 250,000 people have already applied for temporary census jobs. More than 9,000 organizations have already signed on as census partners, and our field infrastructure that includes thousands of census managers and support staff are well on their way to being ready to conduct the 2020 census. This is an exciting time, and I thank you for being part of counting our nation's population in 2020, a national event that serves as the foundation of our nation's democracy. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Tim. And now, I'd like to introduce some very special guests that we've been mentioning today. We have with us partners, in addition to the people in the room and those that are watching on the webcast. We have Bill Anuit Ubby. He's served as the governor of Chickasaw Nation as well. Since 1987, he has worked towards goals of economic and development and self-sufficiency for the Chickasaw Nation. Also, we have Lisa Hamilton. She is the president and CEO of Annie E. Casey Foundation. She is a talented and visionary leader with a deep understanding of the needs of kids and families. And then we have Loida Garcia-Febo. She's the president of the American Library Association. Ms. Garcia-Febo has previous experience as a school and public librarian in both Puerto Rico and Queens, New York. Please join me in welcoming Governor Anuit Ubby.
Thank you very much. And that's like music to my ears. He actually pronounced my name the way that Chickasaws pronounce it. Most people say Anatubby, okay? So it's a little, it's very good. Thank you very much. And so, good morning, everybody. Yeah, isn't it a wonderful day today? It is. Every day is a wonderful day. And I appreciate the opportunity and the invitation to speak today. And it's important to know that the press is interested in this, and that because you play a very important role in this. I think that we heard this morning already that the census is essential to governmental operations and the allocation of funding. Funding that determines available money for things like transportation infrastructure, mass transit, housing, and emergency services. For these reasons and others, it's vital that we conduct an accurate census. And so it's very important that we all be involved in the gathering of this important information. In some cases, there's been a undercounting of certain populations. And as Native Americans, we have had a long-term issue that affects us. In the 2010 census, Native Americans were undercounted at about 4.9% less, a rate more than double the next closest population group. There are a lot of reasons for this undercounting, and it includes a number of logistical obstacles. According to the 2010 census, roughly 26% of Native Americans live in hard-to-count census tracts. For instance, some reservations are in remote locations, and they're pretty difficult to access. As I heard this morning about the access and the ability to utilize more than the paper count, use telephone and the internet, I can see that can obviously improve the count. And some of these reservations, you don't have street names. You don't have convenient ways to identify the households. And almost 1/4 of Native American populations across the United States live in poverty. And lack of permanent housing, as well as a prevalence of shared housing, makes it really difficult to ensure that all these families are counted. An accurate counting of Native Americans is particularly important because of the government-to-government relationship that tribes have with this federal government. You know, we rely, and you hear about these things, and sometimes you're not really as aware of it, but the federal government has a treaty, and they have treaty responsibilities to provide certain services. Education is one, health care, housing, and other services to Native Americans. So an accurate count of people from all Native American nations or tribes is absolutely essential in being able to outline the details of these responsibilities I just mentioned. There's a great deal of Native American nations that we can reach our citizens and encourage them to participate. So it's important that we as tribes step up and become partners. And so the Chickasaw Nation has formed a complete count committee for this purpose. And we've launched an awareness campaign that includes an advertising campaign in both tribal and local outlets, direct mail pieces to reach citizens and employees at their homes, encouraging them to participate. We have a heavy online and social media presence, and informational booths and kiosks at facilities and events throughout the year. We encourage all tribal nations to institute their own initiatives to encourage their citizens to participate and to form their own complete count committees for the 2020 census. Every tribe can form a complete count committee. Tribal leaders can reach out to citizens and constituents explaining the importance of the census and encouraging participation. By participating, we speak for the generations of Native people that preceded us and for those yet to come. The funding that results from our participation will help us to continue to build a bright future for our people. We will do our part to ensure every Native American is counted in 2020. This is your census. This is our census. We all need to work to assure its accuracy, and I believe the key word here is engage. Thank you very much.
Good morning. It's great to be with all of you to celebrate Census Day and to be with our colleagues at the Census to talk about how we can ensure an accurate count in 2020. You already heard a lot about the importance of supporting the 2020 U.S. Census, but I'd like to share what my organization, the Annie E. Casey Foundation, does to advocate for an accurate count and why we believe the 2020 census count matters to all of us as a nation. The Casey Foundation is committed to ensuring a bright future for all of America's children, families, and communities. And we're committed to using data to guide our decisions. And we do a lot to encourage our partners and decision makers at every level to use data to inform their decisions as well. So the wealth of data that the census provides is vital to both of those commitments. Our signature publication, Kids Count, relies heavily on census data to provide an annual snapshot of how children and families are faring across the country. And we also use census data in countless other ways to inform our work, to show us where problems and challenges are for children and families that are at the heart of our mission. And they help us gain insight into what's working and for whom. But we are far from the only organization that relies on these data, and our mission isn't the only one that depends on having consistent and trustworthy statistics. An annual and accurate decennial census is essential for anyone to get a reliable picture of child, family, and community well-being across the country. It's also essential for the millions of young people and families whose well-being and opportunities in life are often bolstered by public programs. 55 major federal programs and hundreds of billions of dollars each year are based on census-driven statistics, and that includes programs for education, school lunches, Head Start, Medicaid, and children's health insurance programs, just to name a few. We can't afford a decade of underfunding for programs and services that we know millions of Americans, and particularly American children, need to have stable lives and need those programs to survive. So an inaccurate 2020 census will undermine the ability to develop effective policies and programs to address the challenges that we know millions of kids and families and communities will need for years to come. An inaccurate census also threatens to mute the voices of undercounted groups and jeopardize the most fundamental values of our democracy by withholding political power and representation from people who are unrepresented. This includes communities of color, children and families in rural communities and on reservations, as well as immigrant and low-income individuals and families and their kids. The 2010 census missed more than 2 million kids under the age of 5. That's 10% of all young children. If we don't act, the 2020 census could miss even more of them, many of them kids of color or in low-income families. About 4.5 million young people live in neighborhoods that are at a high risk of being not counted. And this matters even more as we head into next year, when children of color are expected to represent the majority of America's children. And so we want to make sure that we count children of all races and from all backgrounds and all types of communities, because they're essential to help us build America's future. All people, including children, have the right to be counted and represented in our democracy. It's not just the right thing to do, it's what the Constitution asks of us. We at the Annie E. Casey Foundation, along with many of our peers in philanthropy, have supported various efforts to help ensure that right for everyone. We've advocated for children and their families and others who are often relegated to the shadows. With the census officially 1 year underway, it's time to focus on how to get everyone engaged. We have a part to play in engaging people across every community, whether rural, urban, suburban, or on a reservation, so that we all understand the importance of participation. Schools, churches, and professional and volunteer organizations can get involved in local complete count committees. They could even help start one if their community doesn't have one already. And we need child-focused organizations on every committee to ensure that young kids aren't missed in this count. By working with the committees and gearing our outreach toward communities that we know are regularly left out, we can make sure that every child, family member, and neighborhood resident is counted. The census is about America. It tells us who we are as a country and how we're changing. It brings together millions of different voices to help us tell our rich and complicated and multifaceted story. It shines a light on every corner of our nation and shows us where the needs are and how best to meet them. The census is about people, and without people actively supporting a full count, it won't happen. But if we all do our part, we can help ensure that this next chapter of America's story includes everyone's voice and that it's told in all of its richness and diversity with fairness and with accuracy. Thank you.
Good morning. Buenos dias. My name is Loida Garcia Fibo, and I am the president of the American Library Association. I am excited to be here today to talk about the work that ALA and libraries are doing to achieve a complete count in the 2020 census. Many people say that a librarian is like a human research engine. People from all walks of life come to libraries with questions, and we help them find answers. Next year, when people begin to receive mail asking them to complete the census, we know that many of them will have questions about it. They may wonder, why should I fill this out? Is this letter legitimate or fake? Do I have to respond online? Libraries will be a trust resource of information to answer these questions. And we will be a free source of internet access for people who want to respond online, even if they don't have an internet connection at home. While the online response option is new, libraries' commitment to an inclusive count is not. In the 2010 census, more than 6,000 libraries host Census Bureau outreach sites. We are committed to helping our communities achieve a complete count because libraries serve everyone, and librarians believe that everyone counts. Juntos, con nuestras comunidades, vamos a asegurar un conteo completo y preciso, porque las bibliotecas sirven a todos, y a los bibliotecarios creemos que cada persona es importante. We know that the census results will have a tremendous impact on funding and representation for our communities. And we know that we have a tremendous opportunity to promote equity because 99% of hard-to-count areas are located within 5 miles of a public library. Libraries are in inner-city schools, Hispanic-serving colleges, and remote tribal lands. We serve young children and senior citizens alike. So here are 5 ways that libraries will partner with their communities and the Census Bureau to promote a complete count. 1, librarians are serving on state and local complete count committees from Montana to New York and Georgia to California. 2, libraries are hosting job fairs to help people in their communities get hired as census takers. And if they need a computer to complete the online job application and training, they can do that at the library. 3, libraries will provide locations for census outreach activities, from distributing brochures to hosting programs with local officials. 4, people who want to complete the census form online can use computers at their libraries. And 5, even after the census is complete, libraries will train data users to help them use census statistics in their business and organizations. I believe that strong libraries equal strong communities. We want our communities to know that they can count on libraries to help achieve a complete count in 2020. We are proud to be working with the Census Bureau and other partners. Thank you so much for the invitation to this important event.
Thank you to all of our speakers today. To stay connected and up to date to the work that we're doing on the 2020 census, I invite everyone to follow the Census Bureau on social media. You can find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube under the U.S. Census Bureau. We are also on Twitter, Instagram, at U.S. Census Bureau. I encourage you to sign up for emails and to stay tuned and updated with us, the Public Information Office at pio@census.gov. One other thing, if you can indulge me, I'd want to mention that our Media Vendor Day for the 2020 Census Advertising Campaign is this week in New York, April 3rd. You can find more information about that at 2020census.gov. I want to thank you all for being here. If you're with the media, we invite you to stay behind for a quick media availability. But again, I'd like to thank the partners that showed up today on the stage, in the audience, and via the webcast. We thank everybody, and we hope that you shape your future. Start here with the 2020 census. Thank you, everyone. That concludes today's press conference, operational press briefing. Media, if you'd like, stay in the room. We're going to have our media availability right here. Yes, 1 second. Give us about 5 minutes, and we'll get started. Thank you. Thank you. About 3 minutes out from the media availability, we will have mics to pass around the room. We will have mics for you. Yes. You're good. They have two cameras.
I mean, I say ABC in the bureau, but you don't know what is going to understand that there.
Thank you, thank you. If you could go ahead and get situated. If you are media, where are the mics? All right, we're going to ask, in regards to time, if you speak into the mic, name, affiliation, give you one question, one follow-up, interest of time. Okay. No, I had right here. She had right here.
Hey, thank you. This is Lauren LaCapra with Reuters. I'm going to open it up with the most newsy question, which is if you have any reaction to President Trump's tweets about the census this morning.
Is that to me?
Yes, to you, Dr. Dillingham. Sorry.
Yes. You know, today we're very focused, and we're focused on making sure we have a complete and accurate count. And I think we're all very much engaged in that. And so we really want to restrict our comments to talking about the great job we're doing and where we are and how it's going to help this nation.
Thank you.
Hi, Claudio Seda with Univision Network. I have a question, if you can answer in English first and then in Spanish. Obviously about the citizenship question. We know that that's in the courts, but how quickly can you put it in the question and take it out?
Nosotros tenemos hasta junio para formular la forma, tanto en papel como para el cuestionario online. Es hasta junio. Estamos trabajando muy duro y estamos trabajando para que el conteo sea completo y preciso. Así que estamos preparados para todo, para cualquier desenlace.
In English?
Okay. Yes. We have to complete the formulation of the questionnaire by June, both in paper and online. And we are prepared for a complete and accurate census. And that's what we are focused right now.
And just so that I didn't mention earlier, there's 2 additional people on the roster. Maria Olmedo Malagon. She's the program manager of our 2020 Communications and Partnership program. And then we have Kevin Smith. He's our Chief Information Officer, Associate Director for Information Technology, IT. Okay? Let's go right up front with Jeff.
Yes, the 2020 budget request is $1 billion short of what the Secretary had said in the fall of 2017 the Census Bureau would need. And it's actually $2 billion short if you leave out the $1 billion carryover. I wanted to know, could you talk about what you would need to eliminate or reduce at that level, or if you are expecting Congress to be able to fill the gap and have the full amount that the Secretary had said was needed?
Sure. As you know, we'll be discussing that in a hearing actually tomorrow, that issue. But I can assure you that we are on schedule and on budget. We have an independent cost estimate that was provided by career professionals that we are consistent with, and we have identified no problem with staying on budget and on time with conducting the census activities.
If I could follow up, do you mean the budget in the request?
The President's request has ample funding that will provide for a complete and accurate census.
Frank Lockwood with the Arkansas Democrat.
I think your mic might be off. Go ahead.
Okay. Frank Lockwood with the Arkansas Democrat Gazette, and I have a follow-up question. The first is, which areas are most likely to have overcounts and which areas are most likely to have undercounts?
Sure. When we look at areas, I will start with the undercounts. Areas that traditionally have had undercounts are hard to count areas. Areas with a preponderance of renters, areas with a preponderance of single people, areas which are language isolated, where people in that area are not fluent in English, a lot of your minority areas and immigrant areas where people have fear of government. Those tend to be undercount. And we focus heavily on them with our partnership program and with our media to ensure we offset some of those fears that may exist in those communities. In terms of overcount, it's one of the challenges sometimes with overcount is people have vacation homes or people where the spouse may input a response and then they input a response to a different mode. But we have processes within our post data collection processing to eliminate a lot of that double counting.
And I'm wondering, we've talked about overcount, undercount. Which are they the same areas that are most likely to get the forms in on time and not get them in on time, or?
That I can't really say. I'm not sure of that statistic.
Well, are there any? I guess are there any? Which areas tend to be areas where they don't get them in on time?
Well, a lot of the areas I listed in the undercount don't get the forms in on time, and we end up going out to knock on their door during what we call non-response follow-up operation. Those are your hardest to count areas that we won't get a form from them until we come and visit. We are looking at a 60.5% response rate for self-response in our models and all the work we've done up to 2020. And so that remaining 39.5% is dependent upon our sending enumerators out to the door to visit, knock on the door, and collect the data. That's often many of our hard-to-count communities.
Hans.
Hansi Wong with NPR News. I have a question for Dr. Dillingham regarding the requesting of administrative records, and I guess any other officials who can answer this question. Requesting of administrative records about citizenship was part of the decisional memo that the option that Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross approved, in addition to including a citizenship question on the 2020 census. So about those administrative records about citizenship, what is the Census Bureau planning to do with those records if a citizenship question is included on the census? And what will the Census Bureau do with those requested records on citizenship if there is no citizenship question that is allowed on the census?
Sure. The use of administrative records, and I will turn it over to Al if they'd like to comment later, but by law, we are obligated. Congress tells us we are to use administrative data that's available for purposes of supporting surveys and censuses within the Census Bureau, but particularly the census. So we collect administrative data, for example, to verify addresses and also to verify the accuracy of the information we receive. So we very much count on and rely upon administrative data from other agencies for purposes of verification and ensuring we have a complete and accurate census.
Will you be using those records to verify responses to a citizenship question if there is a question?
Well, the professionals at the Census Bureau will use that information to verify in accordance with past and best practices and all information, administrative data that we get, we will carefully use it, protect it, and it will only be used for our purposes, including an accurate and complete count.
If I could, just the second part of my first question, what will the Bureau do with those citizenship records if the Supreme Court, if ultimately it's decided a citizenship question cannot be added to the 2020 census?
We'll have to see what the court decision is.
I'm going to go over here.
Media services. Can you hear me?
Yeah, right here.
Yes.
You're good.
Khalil Abdullah, Ethnic Media Services. My understanding is that not filling out the census form is a criminal offense. So if that is true, I'd like to know how many people were charged and fined during the last census to 10, and is one in compliance simply by filling out the number of people in the household as opposed to the entire form? In other words, can a resident in this country meet the legal requirement, and my understanding the constitutional requirement, just to say there are X number of people in the household, period, here's your form back?
And could you just please repeat your name and affiliation? I don't think we heard it at the beginning.
Abdullah,
okay.
Ethnic Media Services.
Thank you.
Well, you know, the Constitution requires that we collect information as part of the decennial census. And we do that in accordance with law. It is a civic and legal responsibility for people to complete their census information. That being said, not all the information we get is necessarily accurate. And as I mentioned, sometimes we have to verify information. And we will process the information we receive when we can certify that it is in fact valid in the key areas for it to be counted. And we, in the past, have had very excellent track record on that. For prosecutions, I can say there, to my knowledge, I'm unaware of prosecutions in recent years, but we will encourage in every way, and we have elaborate procedures to ensure that we get the best information possible.
If I can comment too, under the provision of the Census Act, or Title 13, Congress has authorized the Secretary of Commerce to dictate what questions can be asked, in addition to just the straight constitutional requirement. That authorization is there, and that's the basis for some of the additional questions that you find in the census form. We are not a law enforcement agency. We are a statistical agency, and our role is to collect the best statistics. And we find that we're most effective when we do that by soliciting the cooperation, the willing cooperation of the citizenry. So our focus is going to be the benefits that accrue to the communities based on their participation in the census. And so that's the way we're going to be approaching the requirements to participate in the census. Is you need to participate in the census because it benefits your community and your neighborhoods.
Excuse me, on the follow-up, though, I'm asking a simple question. If you're not the enforcement agency, someone doesn't fill out the census form for whatever reason. Citizenship question, if it passes, other people will say none of your business. What I'm asking is, what percentage, you're tracking all of this data, why can't you tell us how many people, the percentage of residents in the United States of America get fined or are criminally prosecuted for not filling out a census form?
No one. I'll answer that directly. As mentioned earlier, we're a bipartisan statistical agency, and the enforcement of not responding to the census isn't on us. And so I can clearly state and let you know that you asked about 2000 to now. Who has been fined? No one. Chase?
Chase Gunner with Federal Computer Week. The 2020 census is relying on more tech than ever, and in the final months before the count begins, what areas are proving to be trickiest or that the Bureau believes are the biggest risk areas?
Kevin, would you like to comment on the technologies?
Kevin Smith, CIO Census. So from the trickiest, so in the aspect of today, as Al mentioned earlier, a lot of the technology has been proven and tested in the field with real people and real answers, which is great. The things that we're working on right now is testing out with the final stages of performance testing. We are using the best of what the cloud has to offer for technology, and we're going through the final stages of doing performance tests to make sure it will sustain the capabilities it needs to for internet self-response, as well as some of the other technology features we need for enumeration.
And what sorts of things need to be done to make sure that that performance testing is delivered on time? And the $1 billion less in the budget, does that jeopardize that sort of preparation or any of the new tech?
Yeah, so I'll answer what have we done before. We have already performance tested the systems inside of the cloud, making sure that the places that were possibly the worst parts of the system were tested through. So we have no ability to think that the system won't scale. We're right now testing it, scaling it from what it would look like from the outside of the internet into the system. So we have a lot of that taken care of from the standpoint of resiliency in the cloud. And as mentioned before, from the $1 billion in the budget, the things we need for IT are within the budget, and we feel we're within budget. We're able to meet what we need to with the budget we've been allocated.
And I'll just add one thing so we can put something to bed. The full operation of the 2020 census as planned today and as executed today is within the scope of the current budget submission. So the addition that you're talking about does not eliminate any activities, plans, or things that we're currently planning for the census for 2020.
Gentleman in the back.
Thank you very much. Munzer Sulaiman, Al Mayadeen Channel, based in Beirut, Lebanon. Can you give us an idea about the data that you have about how the census will treat people coming from Middle East and North Africa? And specifically, how almost 20 Arab countries that people, whether they are Muslim or Christian living in those countries, they are in the United States probably since late 18th century, some of them. How the census going to deal with that category in 2020? Does, let's say, the people from Arab origins have the right not to be considered either white or non-Hispanic or black or whatever, although some of those are from North Africa. They're black, some country. So it doesn't make any sense, and that prevents many people from accepting to enter the census or avoiding the census. So what is the current data, and how are you going to treat in 2020 this issue? Thank you very much.
If I can start on that, the census is basically self-declared by the individuals who are the respondents. So if I declare in the census that I am black, we accept that. If I declare in the census that I'm white, we accept that. So we accept how the individual respondent reports themselves. It's self-reported. But the second part is we don't determine the racial or ethnic categories. The Office of Management and Budget determines it for all government agencies, and we're required by law to comply with their definitions of race and ethnicity. And so therefore, people from the Middle East may declare themselves white, they may declare themselves black, they may declare themselves other in those categories.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Thank you again. With all due respect, this will not clarify the real issue here. And I hope whether there is data outside about Muslim, maybe it's not sufficient, about Christian, about Jewish, American, but there is no option for others. You need to go to the ethnicity or find a category, add category to the census that gave the people the choice to go. He could be black, he could be white, or he could say Arabs, let's say, or something. You need to add more categories to the census when you requesting the people to register. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your...
And one small correction. We do not collect any information in the census on religion. And Muslim, Jewish, Christian, or religions, we collect no data at all in the census on people's religion.
Go to USA Today, Ms. Berry.
Hi, Deborah Berry with USA Today. A couple questions, just to be confirmed. You're moving ahead as though the citizenship question is on the survey. With that said, if there is a decision by the Supreme Court, are you prepared? How will you shift that? And will that in any way impact the timing and preparations? And separately, can you comment about the possibility of oversight tomorrow, offering a subpoena about getting more information? Thank you.
I didn't hear the last part of that question. Could you?
House oversight is considering doing a possible vote tomorrow on making sure there's a subpoena to get more documentation and information from the Bureau. So if you want to comment on that.
I'm unaware of...
And I can comment on the first part of your question, our preparation, depending on the decision the Supreme Court makes on the citizenship question. We have film that will be prepared for our printer for either decision that they make. And so when the July 1st deadline comes for us, we say run film A or run film B. For either one, it does not delay our plans at all. For our electronic side of the census, we have a plan where we have a switch that says, answer the question, ask the question, don't ask the question. And so it pulls it right out of the electronic version. So we are totally ready, already budgeted, already completed the work necessary to answer either way the decision comes down.
Hi, Janet Adamy from the Wall Street Journal. Just to clarify, because we've heard a couple of different dates about this, when the button needs to be pushed, are you saying on the forms that is scheduled to happen on July 1st?
That is correct.
Thank you.
The print date is July 1st that we have planned with our printer, who's the contract printer. I visited with them, met with the president of the corporation to ensure that they're ready. It's based on the time they need to go through all the printing cycles and the labeling cycles necessary to print the number of forms that we need, and July 1st is their target date. It happens that the Supreme Court session ends the end of June, and the court is aware of our need for a response, for an answer by that time. So we anticipate having an answer one way or the other from the court, which will enable us to move forward with our production process.
Thank you.
Right behind you.
Hi, this is Simone Perez with Vice News Tonight on HBO. I wanted to confirm if you guys are moving forward with the test that I believe is supposed to be rolled out July 1st that would include a citizenship question. And if you have any concerns that that would cause confusion for people if the Supreme Court rules against you guys.
Right now, we have a test, which we're calling our 2019 census test. It's a test that has a panel of 480,000 respondents. 240,000 of the respondents receive a questionnaire that does not have a citizenship question. 240,000 receive a questionnaire that does. It's a non-field test, which means it's a self-response test only. It will have an electronic mode, internet mode, it will have a telephone mode, and it will have a paper response mode. We are using the data from that test to better plan and adjust our options if we see strong variation in response rates on a version of the test that has the question in it versus the version that does not. We use that to help plan our staffing for our field staffing for later next year. So that's the purpose of that test, to really plan out our staffing requirements. And that test is currently scheduled to proceed.
Okay, is there concern that that would cause confusion if the Supreme Court says you can't have that?
We've already begun mailing the questionnaires for that test as we're getting people ready for that test. So that test is starting to move forward at this time before the Supreme Court. I have to have good information as early as possible in the cycle to enable us to react and respond in terms of our staffing requirements.
And we're going in the back.
Thank you. Denise Rollard Barnes with the Washington Informer here in Washington, D.C. Simple question, really, and point of clarification. For particularly inmates who are incarcerated in places that are really considered away from home, where are they counted?
All inmates, based on the Census Bureau's residence criteria, inmates are counted where they are on Census Day. And that's very consistent with the way we count just about all populations. You're counted where you are on Census Day. And so if they are in a prison, that's where they're counted at that time.
About 5 minutes out. Go, gentleman right here. Sweater. Come back to you, Joe.
Hi, Alex Clearfield with National Journal. A question for the panel. What are some new ways that the Bureau is conducting outreach to Native American communities and tribal communities that it wasn't doing in the 2010 census or in past censuses to help increase the response rate?
Thank you for the question. So this decade, we began tribal consultations 2 years earlier than in the lead up to 2010. And we conducted numerous consultations across the country with tribal leaders. And what that has done in preparing them for 2020 is they started earlier in forming tribal complete count committees, beginning analyzing what are they going to do to get the word out that census is safe, it's simple, and it's very, very important to their community. The other thing that we have done is we have, in meeting with each individual tribal government that has a land base, a reservation, we have met with them and asked them what type of enumeration they prefer for 2020. Either the old-fashioned, what we call update enumerate, where an enumerator literally goes door to door and conducts the enumeration in person, or if they prefer an update leave method, which is where we will deliver questionnaire packages and with a questionnaire, and the household can self-respond, or if they don't, we go back during our response follow-up and conduct the enumeration. Or the third option, they want what the majority of the rest of the country is using, which is our total self-response option, where we simply deliver through the mail the 6 mailings that occur with all other households. And they have the choice of self-responding over the phone, online, or the paper form, or if they don't, we will do that during non-response follow-up. So we've heard from all of them, and that has influenced the type of enumeration area for each individual reservation throughout the country. I think the other thing that's probably very different, not only in Indian country, but throughout the country, in all communities, is the advent of social media, particularly in communities where traditional communications via newsletter, via paper communications is very pricey, very expensive. What we have found in the tribal consultations and in other meetings with partners is because social media is something they currently do with their constituents, they are planning to really magnify that to their residents, to their constituents. We heard that loud and clear during the tribal consultations. Social media is a very big mechanism for them to reach out to their population. So that's a very big difference than in the past census.
If I may add something, the communications campaign also used the tribal consultations and everything that was learned on the tribal consultations to adapt and focus to what the tribes wanted for our communications program for the community. I can say that right now we are preparing a very strong campaign for tribal country. We are going to include pretty much all the mediums that you can imagine, as Tim mentions, a very strong social media program, but also TV, digital, radio, print, etc. A particularity is because the operations that Tim just mentioned, the tribes pretty much advise on what kind of operation we will be conducting over there. Our media campaign for the tribes is going to be a little bit different, in which we are going to start early to adapt to those. So it's really going in line with the major decennial operations.
All right, this side of the room. Anyone, your first question right here? Right here? You? Did you? Oh.
Jordan Benebigay with Indian Country Today. How many tribal leaders did you meet with? Because there are 573 recognized tribes, more than 60 state-recognized tribes, and many more who are not recognized. And so there's a huge gap there, and there's also 326 reservations all over the country. There's going to be a huge gap. I just want to know how many tribal leaders did you meet with all those 600 plus governments?
So when we conducted the tribal consultations, they were often hosted in a central location where tribal leaders from each of the tribal governments could attend. And all told, I believe we conducted 19 different consultations over a 2-year period. We worked with the National Congress of American Indians, the Alaska Federation of Natives, and numerous other tribal organizations at the regional level to further invite tribal leaders to participate. We can provide you the exact number of tribal leaders that attended. I don't have it top of my head right now, but just to assure you, many of these consultations were conducted. We also did online webinar consultations for those that could not in person attend. And I should mention that these consultations occurred not only in the lower 48, but they also occurred in Alaska. And we timed the Alaska consultations with the AFN conferences and so forth. So very strong participation.
And we'll have our last question in the back here. I appreciate everybody's time. If you didn't get a second question or you have additional questions before this last question is asked, I'd like for the PIO staff to raise their hand. Raise your hand. So once we wrap, you know who to attack and we can go ahead and set something up, okay? All right.
Hi, thanks. I'm Namo Abdullah with Ruda. It's an international news agency. President Trump said in the tweet that without the citizenship question, the census will be quote unquote meaningless. I basically, I looked at the 10 questions that the 2010 survey asked. In this increasingly digital age, it seems to me that the government knows answers to all of those questions through surveillance, social security number that we get, and things like that. I just want to know really what new information does the census reveal that the government in this digital age doesn't already know about all of us? Thanks.
Let me just say that as the discussions here today and the presentations and the film, et cetera, the census data is so valuable. It's objective, core data that is used across the nation at all levels, by all people, by all communities. It's attached to economic data sometimes to help us understand and help us to formulate decisions and policies with regard to impacts and services, et cetera, that deal with the people across the nation and their communities and their businesses. So we at Census collect the data, and actually, if we really think about what we do, we collect numbers. And what do we produce? We produce numbers. So the data, as we've discussed, is totally secure, the best technologies available for protecting individual data, and we have privacy protocols going into place that are state-of-the-art, that have never been used before, as additional layers of protection so that people cannot get individual level data. That confidentiality is in fact protected. So what I can say is we're in the data business and we're in the number business, and America uses this data, and they use these numbers for very important purposes, and we will do everything possible, and we are totally confident that this data confidentiality will be protected.
And on that note, we're going to go ahead and wrap. I'd like to thank everybody for showing up today. And again, PIO, if you could raise your hand if you have any follow-up questions, interview requests, PIO@census.gov as well. Thanks, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. I'll take care of this. I'm going to grab your bags.
It is not that long. It's like 30.
Cool. The circle was steady, right? The whole time?
Yeah.
Cool. Let's head out.